Radio.
You're listening to Cryptocurrent, the only podcast that explores the bold projects, exciting opportunities, and the growing reach of blockchain and cryptocurrency. Whether you've got skin in the game or you're just crypto curious, keep an open mind, enjoy the conversation, and stay cryptocurrent. Now here's your host, Richard Carthon.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Cryptocurrent. Your host here, Richard Carthon, and today got a special guest all the way from NYC, but had to relocate with everything going on with COVID. We have Joe Lallouz with Bison Trails. How you doing today?
Hey, how's it going? Thanks so much for having me on the show. And normally based out of New York City, but currently relocated, working. Our whole company is working remote.
Yeah, definitely understand having to do that with everything that is going on. But go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself. Give us some background on who you are and how you've gotten to where you are today.
Awesome. So I'm Joe Lallouz. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Bison Trails. Bison Trails is an infrastructure as a service company specifically focused on blockchains. So we work with some of the world's top custodians, exchanges, regulated entities, banks, asset managers, funds. We help them run infrastructure on a whole variety of different blockchains. We've been doing this for a couple of years, and it's a very, very technical company, very, very technical product, and we've been working on this for the last few years. It's super, super interesting space to be in, and our entire mission is all about making it easier for folks to participate in the blockchain space and to build different products and services in the space.
For sure.
My background is really truly my entire career I've been a startup founder. So this is the third venture-backed company that I'm building. I've built a number of venture-backed companies in the past. Prior to this, worked on a company called Grand Street, which we exited to Etsy, where I joined the leadership team over there for a few years.
Congrats.
But thanks. Yeah. And a whole bunch of projects that never became companies and companies that never became anything in between. So, for every sort of project or company that you end up working on, there's probably another 20 that you never speak about again.
Right.
So, a very, very, very sort of traditional startup founder story. So my background is in tech startups. I've been building tech startups my whole life. Really, really focused on mostly software companies. So my co-founder and I, we've been working together for about 17 years now, and we built a whole bunch of companies together. We're both technical. We met in engineering school. And we've really spent the better part of the last it's crazy to say this, but the better part of the last 2 decades working on tech companies.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
I mean, the fact that you've gotten to pursue your passion with a good friend and make some really cool companies and exit a couple of times. I mean, that's nice. That's what you dream for, right?
Yeah. It's I feel incredibly fortunate, obviously, that I've been able to work on things. They say if you love what you do, it doesn't really feel like work.
Right.
I don't know if that's entirely true for startups. I think it feels like work anyways. But I think the point of that is, it's like you like doing the work, right? You love doing the work,
right.
And that's the whole point. And so I really do love doing the work, and so it's been quite a wild ride.
Awesome, man. Well, tell me a little bit about how did you first learn about cryptocurrency and blockchain? What was your first introduction and what made you decide to dive deeper into this subject matter?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I kind of, you hear a lot of the, when was the first time you bought Bitcoin stories, or when was the first time you heard about Bitcoin stories? Mine's not actually all that exciting. It's funny that I think my entrepreneurship and startup founder path to where I am today can be pretty, is kind of an interesting story. And, I'm happy to talk a little bit about that. But I got into crypto and blockchains mostly because I'm just a huge nerd. There's not really any like better reason, or some people, at least like some people in the blockchain space or crypto space that I know, I would almost consider them like clairvoyant, or like sort of seeing the future and saying like, oh, this is going to be, this will be the future. And the truth is that I was actually introduced to crypto and blockchains pretty early in their in the sort of like crypto space time frame. I would say probably around 2010.
Yeah, very early.
Yeah, but to be like entirely fair, in 2010, I wasn't like, this is the future, I need to be involved in this. I was kind of like, this is super weird. It's very, very technical. It's programmable money in a lot of ways. There's some really interesting sort of social economics or social finance pieces to this, and things like, game theory and the psychology behind incentives were all things that I was super interested in personally, for a whole variety of reasons, and for many years. And I'd actually done some work in college on a few of those different topics. But yeah, I mean, like my introduction to crypto was it was another engineer that I was working with that was mining Bitcoin on some of our company hardware, and he ended up getting in trouble for it. And at that time, we were like, "What is this thing that this guy's doing?"
Right.
started looking into it, and at that time, just that was really just like a first introduction. And then the last company that I worked, but an introduction, but definitely like piqued my interest and piqued my co-founder's interest. And the next company that we worked on, we actually there was a marketplace component to that company, and one of the things we'd done was we'd started integrating Bitcoin payments, and this was through a third-party partner. I'm drawing a blank on the name of the partner at the time. I'm not sure if they're still around anymore, but this is around 2012 or 2013, still pretty early in the blockchain and crypto days.
Very early.
We ended up unintegrating the payment processor because the majority of the blockchain of the Bitcoin transactions that came through ended up being fraudulent or flagged as fraud. So it was kind of an operational headache at the time, and but just continued to sort of interact with blockchains and crypto throughout my career. And then ultimately, when I was at Etsy, I started doing a lot of angel investing and was investing in a whole bunch of different crypto projects and blockchain projects. And so it's funny, as like a founder and someone who's building a company in the space and has built, we've built a pretty big company so far. And we've done a lot of work in the space and worked with some of the best protocols in the space. It's sort of interesting to see like my trajectory getting to here actually came, a little bit closer from like angel investing and like looking from the sides, as opposed to, I wasn't a protocol developer. We weren't designing a new protocol or anything like that.
Right. Which is fine. I mean, everyone has their own unique way that they finesse their way in. I mean, yeah. Mine came in very late. Like one of the main reasons I started this podcast in the first place was I didn't discover cryptocurrency until beginning of 2018. I wish it had been on my radar in 2010. And I was actively doing stuff in 2012. I just like think about how different life would have been had I at least just been introduced to this space, right? So now you've kind of been in the space for a while. You've known about it. You've kind of worked in it for a while. Tell me what made you start Bison Trails. So of course you broke it down earlier what it is. How did you and your co-founder come up with the concept, and what made you just go for it?
Absolutely. It's funny. You said like you didn't. You started. One of the reasons why you started this podcast is you didn't know about it until a little bit later, but. In a lot of ways, sometimes I think about that and I realize like, oh, I've known about this for so long, and it took me way too long to actually like make it my full-time job. So kudos to you for sort of finding out about it and like making it a focus of your work right off the bat. It took me a few years before I think I gave in to that urge. And, in hindsight, I look back and I realized like I probably should have done this earlier. And I was obviously interested because I kept, finding ways to get back to blockchain and crypto.
Right.
But getting back to your question, the way that we, the sort of genesis story behind this company is, it can be kind of a long story. So I'll sort of shorten. I'll give like the shorter version. My co-founder and I have been working together for a while, and generally speaking, when we start to work on a new project, we take a very hands-on approach. So it's a very sort of startup founder approach to building a new company, which is, really you have to hands-on experience what you want to be working in for you to truly understand if it's something you're passionate about and you care about. And after we had left Etsy, we were, looking at sort of where we were spending our time, most of our time, while we were still at Etsy, and then as we left, we were sort of thinking about what we wanted to do next, and realized that we kept coming back to the blockchain and crypto space as like a really significant point of interest, and looking at the things that we're thinking about the most and the conversations we would have. We'd have like long debates about what was interesting and what was not and what was going on in the world, and everything kind of ended up coming back to blockchain and crypto. And so I think ultimately we said, let's build something in this space. Let's just build anything, just to really make this our full-time focus, while we figure out to help figure out what we wanted to work on next. And after spending about 6 months, kind of, I would just, the best way to describe it is messing around or tinkering in the space and just reading a ton, reading every white paper that was ever written, and engaging with more and more of the crypto community.
Right.
It became super clear to us that this was what we wanted to do full time, and this is what we were going to work on for the next 15, 20 years, because this is what we cared about. And so then it just became a matter of okay, what matters, right? What really matters. And one of the things that we kept not being able to wrap our heads around was this idea that you had the smartest and weirdest people that you'd ever met that were working on building these new blockchains, these new protocols, that were working on building, these new transfer of value networks. And at the time, most of the infrastructure for a lot of these transfer of value networks, in Bitcoin and a whole bunch of other protocols, the infrastructure was these proof of work mines. So these large scale sort of data centers that were, somewhat homebrewish, not your traditional data center. And folks were running this compute to help power these proof of work networks. And to us, it felt really weird because that whole system was a really big black box. You couldn't really understand what was going on. If you asked questions about it, people were really cagey. You'd somehow narrow down an owner of one of these proof of work mines, and you'd be like, so how does it work? And they'd be running the other direction, trying to avoid every question possible. And to us, this made no sense. There's this dissonance, those sort of open source, really open, let's build these new protocols and make it all collaborative. And then the folks that were running the infrastructure were really, really closed off. And so the first thing we said, let's explore that. B, let's open that up and let's make it super transparent and make it obvious. And then, and C, let's see if we can build something that's, fits in our wheelhouse. That's super important for the ecosystem. And that's really the genesis of Bison Trails. One of the first projects we worked on was we actually built a proof of work mine, a pretty large scale for 2 people, small by Bitmain standards, but large for two people.
Right.
It was a sort of exploration project that we worked on, and wrote a whole bunch of software and automated that, but learned the ins and outs of infrastructure and what it meant to validate blocks and build blocks, and how chains were secured and what mattered and what didn't. And then we were pretty transparent about it. We're transparent about the whole thing, what matters, what doesn't, and all that stuff.
Let me interject right there. And
Sure.
Something that I really enjoy about this founder story is that you followed a curiosity, right? You and your co-founder were very curious in this space and wanted to learn more. And so you decided to dive in on a problem that y'all found interesting and unpacked it. And then something else that came out of it was the transparency side. It's how do we open up the hood of this and be able to show it in a more transparent way and improve upon it? And I think that's where innovation is great and where it needs to be, where people are following their curiosities and piquing their interest in some way, and then going down that rabbit hole to see how it can fit a lifestyle, or you can work on something that one is bringing you joy, but then also is solving a bigger issue that is out there. So I commend y'all for doing that, and just going back to why I do this podcast in the first place and speak to so many amazing people like yourself is I'm just trying to pique curiosity to different things that speak to people in various ways, so that if one way and one something that clicks in your head is wow, that sounds interesting, let me go look at this, and now I want to go deeper into crypto and blockchain, I've won. So I really appreciate that's how and why y'all got started in this, and I really think that it's a great way of looking at business.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. And honestly, this is advice I give founders when I angel invest or when I'm advising a founder. And honestly, it's advice that I take myself very close, very, very serious to heart is, if you're not interested, truly interested in the problems you're solving. So some people will come to you and say, like, I have this great business idea. Like, yeah, that might be a good business idea, but do you care about it? And the reason why that matters is because inevitably when, stuff goes wrong, I was going to curse, but I won't curse. When stuff goes wrong with the company, and it inevitably will, because, not everything is most things are not perfect in an early stage company. The thing that's going to keep you going is the fact that you care about it. Because there's going to be days where you're going to wake up and you're going to say, forget about this. I'm done. Like,
Right.
This is too hard. I don't want to do it anymore. And if you deeply, deeply care about the outcome, and you deeply care about the what you're trying to do and the mission and the vision of what you're working on, then you'll keep going. You'll push through, and that's how you find success. And otherwise, it's too easy to give up. Everything will be pointing you towards giving up.
Oh, right. 100%.
Yeah.
So within Bison Trails, you're able to explore this curiosity and, fast forward today, you've been able to raise you're venture backed, you got people using the platform, you're hiring, you're doing a lot of good things. Catch me up to like, where are you at presently and what is the team currently working on / like where are you at in the company life?
Absolutely. Super proud. We raised a pretty large Series A in the fall. So we raised a $25.5 million Series A in the fall, and on top of a $5.5 million Series Series Seed the year prior. So we raised a good amount of money from some of the best venture investors in the world, not just in the blockchain and crypto space, just some in the world. Super proud of that. We've put together a world-class team. So a really, really incredible team of mostly technical folks. So infrastructure engineering and security and DevOps engineering, and then some really incredible operational folks and some business development folks. We work with, like I said, kind of really, really early on, we work with some of the world's top custodians, exchanges, crypto asset managers, venture funds, large scale token holders, so individuals that hold large amounts of tokens, and we help them run essentially blockchain validation nodes. So things like validators and bakers and transcoders and orchestrators and all the things that involve running highly secure, 24/7, geographically distributed and redundant nodes on a bunch of different blockchains. Team's about 40 or so people today, and we're still growing the team in a few different areas. Super proud. We're currently working with more than 20 different blockchain protocols. We're heavily focused on working with protocol teams from the earliest stages. So from even when it's just like two founders or a founder that's trying to get an idea off the ground. We'll often help them in the earliest stages do things like test and understand what it means to deploy and orchestrate a large-scale distributed network. Again, this is a very, very sort of technical concept,
Right.
but it's part of like what we do, and part of what we do to give back to the ecosystem. It's like we work with a lot of these test nets really early on, and make sure that they're run really well and super safe, super secure. Because, as you know, in the blockchain and crypto space, all of these blockchains need to be hyper secure for us to be able to use them. And so,
yes.
And so that's the mission of the company.
Just real quick, just going back to something you said, really, that is, I think people underestimate, to be up 24/7, just like and try to be no downtime, and like that's a lot. That's a hard feat. That's a hard thing to tackle. So just want to just make very clear to all the listeners, like that is our very, very, very challenging technical thing to be trying to tackle.
Yeah, definitely. And honestly, I that really is like when Aaron, my co-founder, and I started building this company, that was really where the the idea came from, which was, it's a hard problem to solve. And at the time, a lot of the infrastructure in the crypto space was a little bit more, what I would say, hobby focused and less like enterprise grade. And so, we said to ourselves, like, this company needs to exist. There needs to be a company that's focused on the infrastructure for the space to make sure that these networks can run securely, globally, and 24/7. And that was why we started focusing and building on building this company, and also how we've been able to grow pretty quickly and pique the interest of some of the top companies and players in the space and investors in the space.
For sure. Well, thanks for giving us an overview of Bison Trails and everything that's going on with it. But to shift gears just a little bit, as
Sure.
we're living in a world of pandemic right now, having to deal with coronavirus, COVID-19. How are you and your team adapting to what's going on in the world right now?
Yeah, this is so. There's sort of there's two ways to think about that question, or two ways that I've been thinking about that question. The first is operationally, and the second is sort of psychologically. I would say psychologically is very, very difficult. Obviously, there's a tremendous amount of stress and anxiety in the world, which to me is still something that I'm struggling to wrap my head around. This is actually like a global issue, and on one hand, it's crazy because it sort of makes you think like, wow, the scale is huge. On the other hand, it's almost a little bit comforting because you realize the entire world is sort of thinking and going through the same emotional roller coaster that you are,
Right.
which is oddly comforting. I don't know how to like truly describe that. It's like we're all sort of thinking about how bad this is at the exact same time. So it's a pretty unreal sort of feeling. So from a psychological standpoint, the most important thing that we're doing as a team is just making sure that we're staying sort of patient and empathetic, and understanding that people are going to continue to do their best, and really relying on some of our cultural values and trust and transparency, and obviously understanding, generally speaking, that this is a major shift for everyone, and that nothing is particularly easy in a world of various forms of lockdown, or various forms of quarantine, or various forms of only being able to communicate remotely. So, that's, I would say, like the first way we've been thinking about that is just like making sure that we have this sort of support network, the psychological support network that each person on the team needs.
For sure. And I think that people aren't really talking about the psychological side that goes to it, and it's important. And like, yes, it's a lot of, I want to say negative, but like stressful kind of conversations, but I think they still need to be had, because I think some people, even in the work environment, feel like they can't really talk about it, and they like time and place. And I think to an extent, sure, but I think there still needs to be a safe place to where it can at least be acknowledged.
Totally. I couldn't agree more. And I think that, the organizations that embrace that the soonest, I should say, are going to be the most successful through the next few, weeks or months, or however long, this turmoil lasts. I think that most organizations and, most leaders would agree that you're only as valuable as the people that are there and the team that you've built. And, if that starts to deteriorate and you can't, you don't have the right leadership in place, you can't stay calm and really help keep the team focused. It'll be much more difficult to go through tumultuous or turmoil times. And so that's been a heavy focus for us as a team and as an organization. And I'm actually incredibly proud about how well our team has been handling this, and really supporting each other across the board. So that's been pretty fantastic.
For sure. No, that's excellent. I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah. And then the second thing is operational. And so operationally, I would say that we're a little bit lucky. So about 20% or so of the company, it was already remote. So while we're based out of New York City normally, and right now New York City is, I don't know the best way to describe this, but is really, pretty much like one of the epicenters of the COVID outbreak in the United States.
Yeah.
There seems to be a lot of cases in New York and growing. And so, while most of the team, a whole bunch of the team has been remote, a few weeks ago, we actually shifted to fully remote and have been encouraging people to do things like social distancing and working from home. And honestly, what started as a test of our systems very smoothly transitioned into sort of, no, we are going to be fully remote as a company. And so really early on, we said, hey, why don't we do 2-3 days fully remote just to see like if we have the right, tech systems and social systems in place to be able to operate the company remotely if we had to, in the event that we had to. And I feel very fortunate that we took those early steps pretty early on, because I think that's paid dividends over the last week or so. Folks are all working remotely, and we're continuing to operate entirely remotely. So that's been really, really great. The other thing, and this is more important to the industry than it is to even just Bison Trails as a company, is that we are a company that's focused on running distributed systems, geographically distributed all over the world, with 24/7 support and uptime and redundancy. And so in a lot of ways, the DNA of our company is actually is designed to support fault tolerance, right?
Yeah.
Like issues where you can't normally, you're not like, you don't have access to a single data center, or you don't have access to your machines, or you need to be able to, have updates or backups running immediately. And so in a lot of ways, like we've had a lot of the support systems in place to recover from catastrophe, and because the whole company is focused on that. And so I also feel quite fortunate that, we've been able to, use a lot of the systems that we've had in place. And that's been great.
100%. And happy to hear that the operational piece is definitely working the way it needs to. And y'all are going about it the right way. One final bow I kind of want to put on it is, of course, a lot of is still unfolding. Hopeful that we can get past this, but the future is headed towards, I think, being able to work remotely as a team. And the other thing that you brought up with just how, from a point of like resilience of having your team know that like, regardless of like what's going on, they have a place that they can work and they continue to move things forward, and working in a system to where you're literally supposed to be working in opposition in a distributed ledger. Why Bitcoin was made in the first place in response to economic downturn and everything else. It's your business and what you're creating is being tested right now. And what's amazing is, at the end of this, if you wake up and you're like, wow, we survived this and it worked, like the proof is in the pudding. So it's just a really, for y'all in a unique way, it's a unique case study of, look, we told you.
Yeah, this is, I got to say, like, for what it's worth, this is probably as bad as I've ever seen it. I've never seen anything like this in my entire life. Obviously, I don't think anybody really has. There's very few events that have happened globally at this, to disruption globally at this scale. And so I completely agree with you. Like this is the kind of thing you hope never happens, but also, puts the, like you said, like has the proof in the pudding, and really shows like, hey, here's what we can do, and it works, and it's resilient and it's redundant and is geographically distributed. So it is super, super interesting to see it happen. It's obviously something you hope that never would happen, but
right, for sure. Well, Joe, I really appreciate all your input and thoughts and everything. But before you go, what is a final thought that you want to leave with all of our listeners here today?
I would say, and this is probably, maybe a signal of the times and the times that we're living in today. It's just, be as helpful as you possibly can to the people around you. I think like we're all struggling and going through some really tough times, whether it's just being an ear that someone can talk to, or being able to get on the phone and tell someone that you care about them. I think now's the time to do those things, because everybody needs just a little extra warmth in their lives right now. So, and I think that we all have the opportunity to truly be, leaders within our communities, within our friends groups, within our companies, and now's the time to step up.
100%. I think that's a great final thought. Share the love, everybody. Make sure that you're being there for people you care about, and even all the workers out there who are on the front lines battling to help eliminate this crisis. It's definitely a time be a little bit more caring. So appreciate that final thought. What are some different ways that people can connect with you and learn more about Bison Trails?
Yeah, definitely. So you can follow at Bison Trails on Twitter. I'm at Joe Lallouz on Twitter, or you can send us an email, hi@bisontrails.co. All those ways are really great ways to get in touch, and definitely shoot us a line. We're happy to answer questions or hear your thoughts.
Perfect. Well, Joe, again, really appreciate you being on the show. And for everyone listening, stay cryptocurrent. Hi, everyone. Thanks for listening to another episode of Cryptocurrent. For more information on this episode and all of our episodes, please visit us at www.crypto-current.co. Stay up to date with the latest news in cryptocurrency. You'll receive daily emails Monday through Friday that are personalized and curated content specific to you and your interest, powered by artificial intelligence. Are you an accredited investor looking to invest in cryptocurrency? Crescent City Capital can help. Go to crescentcitycapital.com for more information. If you're finding value in our content, please take 5 minutes to leave a 5-star review and a great comment. Also, please make sure to share this podcast with others. Hello, everyone. I hope you're enjoying the quality of this podcast. I can only thank my amazing producer, Andrew DeRitter, with DeRitter Productions, who has put this together. If you have any podcast, visual, or video needs, please go to DeRitterProductions.com. That's DERITTER Productions.com.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Cryptocurrent with Richard Carthon. We'll be back with more exciting developments from the world of blockchain and cryptocurrency next week. But until then, stay cryptocurrent.
Please use available exits now.